Hello there, everyone. I'm Jill Domadigo, and I'll be here to talk to you about some key points about poetry. Now, I bet everyone of you is familiar about poetry, and I'm pretty sure that you guys have read or might be a fan of reading poems. Well, I really adore you since poetry reading is such a very pleasing habit to have, since it does not simply entertain you, but more of allowing you to perceive different aspects of life from a certain individual's perspective. Now, what is poetry? Poetry is a type of literature that evokes a concentrated, imaginative awareness of experience or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Now, it is based on the interplay of words and rhythm. Words are strung together to form sounds, images, and ideas that might be too complex or abstract to describe directly. Poetry gives powerful insight into the culture that created it. Now, why? It is because the type of poetry reflects to the historical or social background of the place it came from. Now, take note that poetry is a type of literature, and literature serves as a record of history of what is certain that time. Thus, poetry gives a reflection to the culture. Now, it consists largely of oral or literary works in which language is used in a manner that is felt by its user and audience to differ from ordinary prose. It may use condensed or compressed form to convey emotion or ideas to the reader's or listener's mind or ear. Poems frequently rely for their effect on imagery, word association, and the musical qualities of the language used. Now, poetry is notoriously difficult to translate from one language to another. Why? It is because of its nature of emphasizing linguistic form rather than using language purely for its content. Now, concreteness and particularity. A poem is most often concrete and particular. The message, if there is any, is general and abstract. It's implied by the images, meaning that the language used is to convey meaning in a more expansive and less condensed way. Meaning that is the reason why mostly poems are hard to understand. Now, these images mostly suggest hidden meanings, and the language used is called figurative language. Now, mostly used figurative language are those that identify resemblance or those comparison between things, like ticking of the clock meaning is mortality or white as a piece. And of course, a lot of figurative language, but let's not deal with it. Now, poetry is as old as history, present wherever religion is present, primal and primary form of languages themselves, and a type of literature based on the interplay of words and rhythm. Take note that the rhyme and rhythm makes the poem more admirable. Now, so poetry is probably the oldest form of literature and probably predates the origin of writing itself. It was said that the oldest written manuscripts we have are the Epic of Gilgamesh and Vedas, or the sacred texts of Hinduism. Now, thus, it preserved the culture a long time ago. Now, poetry can be written all with the same purposes as any other kind of literature, with beauty, humor, storytelling, and political messages. Now, let's go to the characteristics of poetry. Now, one of the most definable characteristics of poetry is the economy of language. It is because poets are said to be mysteriously and unrelentingly critical in the way they write. They carefully select words for conciseness and clarity is standard. Now, next is paragraph in the poem is called a stanza or verse. However, poetry does not necessarily have to have a ordered regularly standard. Now next is the surprises readers. Yes, it has the ability to surprise readers. It allows readers to experience revelation, insight, and understanding of elemental truth and beauty. Then we have evocative. Poetry is evocative. It typically evokes in the reader an intense emotion such as joy, sorrow, anger, catharsis, and of course, the like. Now, prose and poetry possess quite the same elements. Prose and drama have plot, theme, characterization, POV, tone, and mood, while on the poetry, it has subject matter, theme, very rarely characterization, and it's called voice or persona as instead of using POV. Then we have tone and mood. Now for this structure, I know prose has language meant to convey meanings in a more expansive and less condensed way, frequently using more complete logical or narrative structures than poetry does, while poetry depends less on the linguistic units of sentences and paragraphs, and more on units of organization that are purely poetic. Now, for the structure of poetry, we have stanzas. These are the series of lines that group together. Then we have form. It is how poems are labeled. And here are the three most common types of poems. We have the lyric poetry, narrative poetry, and descriptive poetry. Now, let's go to sound patterns. Sound patterns are the what we call as that consist of rhyme scheme, word sounds, and meter, and of course, rhythm. Now, rhythm often in each line is arranged in a particular meter. But in the case of free verse, the rhythm of lines is often organized into looser units of cadence. Now, according to Aristotle Poetics, that the greatest thing by so far is to be a master of metaphor, which is why poetry it might not be very easy to understand, but because it has some hidden meanings, it conveys a lot of emotions and expressions that makes poetry amazing to read. I bet everyone likes to read poetry, and since poetry entertains you, informs you, poetry is such a good hobby to have. So I hope you guys have learned something. Again, this is Jill Domadigo signing off. Thank you.